Hopefully they won't get so emotional. I hate it when women get emotional.
I do too, Diane. And I agree with you. The ladies would take the news much better coming from Raheem.
Ladies, you all are putting it on real thick. And I mean, I don't care how smooth I try to make these snooze, and your boy is smooth. I don't think they want to hear this from me. I mean, this is my hometown, Hampton. And because Diane, you are technically in charge, I think they should probably hear from you.
Yes, I am in charge. So perhaps you thought I was asking you to do it? I wasn't asking you to do it, Rakeem. I'm telling you to deliver the news.
Contestants, please come in. Come in. Take a seat. So good to see you.
All right, and for scene 2, centers on Francine LaRue, the former creative director, as she fights to reclaim her position in Spotlight. Once the driving force behind the pageant, Francine ensured she remained its true star. Van Johnston, now a celebrated host, reflects on the cost of success, having distanced himself from Francine on his rise.
All the single ladies, all the single ladies, all the single ladies, all the single ladies. Oh, Lord have mercy. What is wrong with you, man?
Sorry.
I didn't know who that was behind me.
I'm really sorry. I was just
Crazy walking up behind me like that?
I was trying to surprise you. I'm sorry.
Huh. Well, you're the one who almost got the surprise.
What's wrong?
Why would you do that, man? I haven't spoken to you in 6 months, and you think it's okay to joke around with me like this? Something's wrong.
Wait. For the past few months, all I've been able to think about is what I would say when I saw you again. I haven't been able to eat or sleep for the past few days, just thinking about this moment when I see you again.
Spare me, Van. What am I supposed to feel sorry for you? You ghosted me.
Wait,
Uh-uh. You know what? You really just let go of what could have been a wonderful relationship, or at least a great friendship.
let me.
But no. No. I'm not doing this with you, man. We're not going to talk it out because you know what? You had 6 months to talk it out with me.
Okay, I can listen.
Look, you came here to do a job, and I've got a lot on the line. So other than hello, there's nothing more to say to me.
Nothing?
Nothing.
Nothing?
Nothing. Let's give him a round of applause.
Together, these scenes weave a compelling narrative of ambition, loyalty, and identity within a powerful cultural tradition. I would like to introduce the cast. Diane, played by Denane Barlow. Madison, played by Faith Gilliam. Rakeem, played by Gabe Diaz. Van, played by Luce. And Francine LaRue, played by Deidre Chambers. And just so you all know, there are tickets available for the play, which takes place on June 19th at 7:30 and June 20th at 2 p.m. Tickets are $18.50 online through Ticketmaster and $15 if you purchase them in person at the Hampton Coliseum box office. Thank you very much, Hampton NAACP, for the invitation, and we hope to see you all at the American Theater on Juneteenth. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is great. So we want to definitely support our local talent here, because Marie St. Clair does an excellent job. All right, we're going to roll into our program, Reigniting Freedom Summer, Mobilizing Our Vote in 2026. With the Supreme Court recently gutting of the Voting Rights Act, the stakes have never been higher. Join us for an engaging turnout that connects the spirit of Freedom Summer of 1964, today's fight with voting rights. Who remembers 1964 Freedom Summer? Raise your hand. All right, all right. I know some of you all remember it. That's right. There you go. That's right. That's right. You'll learn more about it now. But with the turn of the Voting Rights Act from the Supreme Court, what happened in Virginia with our referendum, we thought it was very important to not only educate and talk about the importance of what happened to our voting rights, but how we're going to move forward to win. So when you leave out of here, you'll have homework, and we'll have work to do. So with that, we're going to show a quick video. Yolanda, you had a video? Okay. We're going to show a quick video of Freedom Summer 1964.
By the 1960s, the civil rights movement had been in full gear for almost a decade. But institutionalized discrimination against blacks remained part of everyday life, especially in the South, and violence against blacks was escalating. 1963 resulted in significant new momentum for the movement, and media coverage increased awareness across the nation of the ongoing violence. Governor George Wallace tried to defy the courts by refusing to integrate Alabama schools and universities. President Kennedy sent civil rights legislation to Congress. Civil rights activist Medgar Evers was gunned down in his own driveway. An estimated 250,000 people attended the March on Washington, a peaceful rally on the National Mall in Washington, D.C., to hear Martin Luther King, John Lewis, Philip Randolph, and others advocate for the civil and economic rights of blacks. Tragically, 1963 ended with the assassination of the sitting president. Newly sworn-in President Lyndon Baines Johnson actively pursued Kennedy's civil rights agenda. Building on this momentum in the summer of 1964, civil rights organizers recruited thousands of volunteers to help register black voters. The campaign was focused on a state with one of the largest black populations in the country and a horrific record of minority persecution: Mississippi. This project came to be known as Freedom Summer and was marked by blood, tragedy, and triumph. Freedom Summer volunteers, many of them young white college students, traveled south to register eligible voters, teach young black students in freedom schools, and most importantly, to draw attention from the media. At the same time, back in Washington, D.C., supporters were hard at work pushing the Civil Rights Bill through the House and the Senate. The majority of blacks throughout the South, and especially in Mississippi, lived in poverty. Racists used Jim Crow laws, brutality, and murder to shut out black voters and maintain oppression. The Freedom Summer mission was to shatter the status quo once and for all. Freedom Summer succeeded in its mission to register voters and shine a glaring light on racial injustice. The success came at a great cost, with Freedom Summer activists and the black community under attack through bombings, beatings, and arrests. Over 1,000 volunteers were arrested, with many beaten by mobs or racist police. 3 civil rights workers, Andrew Goodman, James Chaney, and Michael Schwerner, were brutally murdered. Their murders launched an FBI manhunt in an operation known as Mississippi Burning. The killings and unrest brought national attention to the civil rights cause and created an outpouring of sympathy. Voter registration drives and marches kept the issue of black discrimination in the public mind, paving the way for the important Voting Rights Act of 1965. Freedom Summer helped create momentum for the civil rights movement and left behind a legacy of faith in the power of political action.
Great, thank you. All right, before we jump right into it, I just want to know, anyone who was born after 1973, please stand. I want you to look around this room. Many of us in this room, parents and grandparents fought for our rights because we didn't have rights and we were too little to fight. And we have some people in here that were actually old enough that was in the fight. You all were born with rights. You were born with affirmative action. You were born with voting rights. You were born with women's reproductive rights, and the list goes on. And guess what? It's all gone. So you need to pay attention to this. This is the reason why we need you all to be in this fight with us. So that's the reason why I wanted you all to stand, because with the president, with this Weaponization Act, that he was trying to fund the hoodlums up at January 6th and try to give them some money. That's what this is about. And so what you're seeing right now, we were hoping that it would not be in your generation, but it is in your generation. So we want you all to really pay closely attention to what you're getting ready to see. Thank you. All right, we're going to get started here. I have a special co-moderator with me. Of course, I'm Gayleen Kanoyton. I'm president of the Hampton Branch NAACP, and I'm also the political action chair for the NAACP Virginia State Conference. And I'll let my co-moderator introduce himself.
How's everybody doing? My name is Josiah Porter Jordan. I'm a junior at Phoebus High School, and I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for helping.
Great, thank you. All right, I'm going to introduce our panelists. We have Reverend Dr. Todd Davison, who's the senior pastor of First Baptist Church Hampton, and he's also a professor at Norfolk State University. And then we have Senator Mamie Locke. She represents the 23rd District. She also chairs the powerful Senate Rules Committee in the General Assembly, and she's an educator in history and political science, and she is from Brandon, Mississippi. Jackson, Mississippi, I'm sorry. They got Brandon online.
That's where I was born.
She's from Jackson, Mississippi, and she was my professor at school. and then we have Dr. Cassandra Newby Alexander. She's an award-winning historian and author, and she's a professor of history at Norfolk State University. I was getting ready to say Hampton. All right, I was getting ready to own her. And then we have Jeremiah Woods, and Jeremiah is my co-partner on the youth side. He's the NAACP Virginia State Conference Youth and College Political Action Chair, and he's a senior at Hampton University. Let's give them a round of applause. I'll let you answer the first question. Okay, we're going to jump right in. Why don't you go ask?
Absolutely. So the first question I'm going to do is going to start with Ms. Locke. Ms. Senator Locke. So could you please provide a brief overview of the Supreme Court's decision and how it affects the political landscape in Virginia and nationwide?
I assume you mean the Calais decision? Okay. The recent decision, you have to take it in the context of Shelby v. Holder, which was ruled in 2013, which was the first act that was taken to the Voting Rights Act. Was a case out of Alabama, which gutted Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. And Section 5 was this section of the act that said that any state that came under the act, that the states that were under the act, had to have any changes that they made to their election laws pre-cleared through the Justice Department. That is, if they did redistricting, if they changed the precinct, if they made any changes to their election laws, those had to go to the Justice Department first to be pre-cleared. So that included Virginia, Georgia, Alabama, all of the southern states, some counties in Alaska and so forth. That was completely gutted in 2013 in Shelby versus Holder. So that was taken away. And what do you think happened after that? Immediately, all of the states started to make changes in their election laws. So Calais, but what it left was Section 2, of the Voting Rights Act, which allowed for states to or some redistricting changes that race could be a consideration in redistricting in other issues. And so Section 2 was used in Louisiana, in Alabama, to do some redistricting in those states. It was challenged in Louisiana when they did redrew some lines and to create 2 seats for African Americans primarily. And so it was challenged by whites in that state who said that it was unconstitutional for them because it was unfair to them that there were these 2 African American seats, although African Americans made up about, I think, 30% of the population in Louisiana. And so initially when it went to the Supreme Court, they said, we're not going to hear it right now, bring it back with some additional discussion. So it was brought back last fall. They took the oral arguments and essentially ruled that Section 2 is now unconstitutional. And interestingly, what they said was you have to show intent, that there was an intent to discriminate whenever lines are being drawn, and so forth. So essentially what has happened from 2013 to 2026 with both Shelby v. Holder and Louisiana versus Calais is the Voting Rights Act is gone. With the gutting of Section 2 and Section 5, there's no more Voting Rights Act. So there's no more voting protection for African Americans that was so hard fought for by African Americans to pass this act in 1965. And that hasn't been that long ago. 61 years for the Voting Rights Act. And now it has can be completely gutted as a result of those two Supreme Court cases.
While we at it, can you bring in the latest one with the Supreme Court of Virginia? Because we turned out in record numbers, y'all, for this voting for the referendum.
What the Supreme Court of Virginia did was to essentially say that I have to kind of monitor what I'm going to say.
Yeah, we are streaming.
Invalidated the votes of 1.6 million individuals who voted yes for the referendum to say that we agree that we can do mid-decade redistricting. And redistricting normally only takes place every 10 years and not mid-decade as it was done this time around. But the reason it was being done was because you have a president of the United States who is on tape saying, find me 5 seats in Texas, and that started the whole process of mid-decade redistricting. And Texas did that without a referendum. Missouri did it in a 6-day special session without a referendum and eliminated the seat of Emanuel Cleaver. So did Florida is in the midst of doing the same thing. North Carolina actually did it prior to Texas, but y'all don't know about it. They got rid of 3 seats, and without a referendum. California and Virginia are the only 2 states that held referendum to do mid-decade redistricting, allowed the people to make the decision on whether or not to change the voting process by way of the Constitution. But the Supreme Court of Virginia decided that we're going to define election. And the way that it happens is you're supposed to have an intervening election in Virginia to change the Constitution. That is, you have the proposed constitutional amendment change, an intervening election, and then the second proposed change to the Constitution. The change was proposed in October. The election was in November. The second proposed change was in January. So they were defining the election, or they were supposed to be defining the election. If you go and read what the justice said, he never talked about the election. He never even talked about what the election meant. He started quoting Ralph Waldo Emerson in a ruling and started talking about the early voting process, which is, by the way, a part of the election process. I would commend to you to go and read Chief Justice Cleo Powell's dissent, where she says that if you want to know what an election is, read the Code of Virginia. It tells you what an election is. The justice who wrote the opinion never talked about the code and never talked about what an election is. So it was done the right way. We wrote the legislation. There was an election, and we did the second part of the legislation. The Supreme Court was wrong in that ruling. And that's all I want to say about that right now.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to make sure we had that background. Now, this is a conversation, so if you all want to jump in and add to it, please feel free to do that as well.
Thank you so much for that, Senator DeLocke. So, Dr. Cassandra Newby, could you please do me a favor and provide some insight into the historical significance of the Freedom Summer and its impact on civil rights movement?
Thank you so much, and thank you all for coming to this forum. It's so important. We have a tendency as a country, I'm not even going to say to forget our history. We have a tendency in this country to lie about our past. We have a tendency in this country to make up stuff to justify what we do to harm other people. And that's been a long legacy. What the Freedom Summer represented was an awareness by the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And I don't know how many of you are aware that Ella Jo Baker, who was born in Norfolk, grew up in this area, is the one who helped to found the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. There was a belief that we needed to get the young people involved, directly involved, in making sure that their rights were not only recognized and respected, but put into law. Even though the Constitution supposedly put it into law, even though the 14th Amendment supposedly, and I'm using that word intentionally, supposedly gave all people who were of African descent the rights that they should have had and did have in the Constitution before, but over a period of time, the justices in our various Supreme Courts began to take away the humanity of all African Americans, whether free or enslaved. And of course, the final nail in that coffin was the Dred Scott versus Sanford decision that ruled, and it was written by a slaveholder, a very wealthy slaveholder who was Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Roger B. Taney, that black people are not human and therefore have no rights that a white man must respect in this country. Now, it may make you feel uncomfortable, and I say, good. Feel uncomfortable, feel outraged, because that is our past. How can we talk about a better future if we don't recognize that we had a horrible past? Not everything was horrible, but certainly a lot of it was. because the rights of human beings were not only disrespected, but were trampled. And so the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee knew if we're going to have a future, we need young people on board. And we need to put them at the wheel so that they can drive this engine forward. Give them assistance, give them support, help give them direction, but put them in front of that wheel and let them drive. And they did. But we cautioned them. America does not respect the lives of black people. And the news media will not even cover your death. The only ones they cover are the deaths of whites. The only ones they feel sympathy for are the deaths of whites. And so, fine, we know what we're dealing with, and we need to put white people right there with a bullseye on their back. Know that if you kill a white person, it'll be on the front page of the newspaper. You kill a black person, it won't even be a blip on the news cycle. We've seen that even today when black people get murdered. When black people are harmed in some way, it's usually our fault. If we're the shooters, it's because we are somehow innately criminal. But if a white person is a shooter, it must be some sort of mental illness. So we still see these old tropes. They keep coming back at us because it's baked into our culture. So when people were arguing that America is not systemically racist, they were lying through their teeth. The organizers of this event, and in particular Bob Moses, who recently passed away in the last, I guess, few years, he believed that he needed to recruit whites from the Midwest who had very little knowledge or contact with this kind of racism. They were optimistic. They believed in the American dream, and they were going to go down there and help. And yes, they tried to equip them with knowledge and understanding, but how do you tell a person that your life is not worth anything to the person looking across who may even have a police uniform on? Because they fear your presence, because your presence as a white person would validate the humanity of that black person that you're supporting. And in our society, you know, you look at the history of how the law was written. White people who supported abolitionism, who participated in the Underground Railroad, who fought for the rights of black people, there were laws that punished them much more severely because they were more of a threat. Why? Because they were seen as one of the original justified citizens of this country. So they were seen as much more of a threat. And so Moses wanted to put those people right in front and center. And within the first week of the Freedom Summer that was supposed to help start schools, because Mississippi was notorious for not providing public funding paid by black tax dollars as well as white tax dollars. We're not opening up schools for black kids because they didn't want them to learn. They did not want them to have options. They wanted to keep them in poverty because the best way to keep someone in poverty is to keep them ignorant and to keep them isolated. And so they wanted to do that. And the freedom schools were to open that door so that for the first time, they not only start getting an education, but more importantly, they start learning about who they are. They start learning about African American history. You know that history that got taken out of our schools not too long ago, like 4 years ago, here in Virginia? That history. I'm not talking about that crap that they replaced it with. I'm talking about real history I'm sorry, this is me talking. I'm talking about the real history that's filled with the good, the bad, and the ugly. We need to know that history because too many people are still carrying the wounds of the trauma of our past. And we need to face that trauma, and America keeps veering away from facing that trauma and blaming victims for their own victimization. And so Moses put these people out there, but within the first week, the white Mississippians had killed 3 men. Now we know that they killed a heck of a lot more than that, because when they were searching for those 3 men, and they were dredging up the rivers of the lakes, they found thousands of bodies. And no forensic work was done to find out who these people were. And so we know that Mississippi had a big issue. In fact, I remember being at a conference one time and listening to Bob Moses talking about his experiences the first time he went into Mississippi. And he said he saw this big sign saying, "Welcome to the wonderful state of Mississippi. All the ins stay out." A big sign on the highway that said that. He knew he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. But he also knew that was the bastion. That was the place that he needed to be. By the way, the National Council of Negro Women, through Dorothy Farabee, who was connected, by the way, to the family who was born in the Grand Contraband Camp in Hampton. Dorothy Farabee used to take a group of black women who were physicians and nurses every year to Mississippi to provide health care to those who were without it. For years they did that. So there were efforts by a lot of groups to help the people of Mississippi. And we know those 3 men were killed, and even Johnson did not call the families of all the 3 men, only the 2 white men. And so this was a history that we need to know about and remember. Now, were they successful? Well, they did get a number of men and women to register to vote. In our society today, I ask all the young people I meet, "Are you registered to vote?" Too many of them say no. I had one student tell me she didn't get involved in that mess. I almost lost my mind. I asked, "What mess are you talking about? Are you talking about the mess that allows you to decide where you can live, how much you pay in taxes, what your society looks like, whether you have fresh water, fresh air to breathe? Are you talking about that mess? Are you talking about the mess that people fought and died for? Your ancestors?" And I went on for about 15, 20 minutes talking about that mess. Fortunately, she didn't run screaming. She listened. I would love to know if that young lady finally got registered to vote. But I think that's the question we need to ask everyone. And demand an answer. Are you registered to vote? Because if you're not registered to vote, the question is, why not? Because if you want to be in a democracy, you better vote. The reason we're in the situation we are today is because people didn't vote, because they believe the lie that their vote doesn't matter. You know, if somebody, I don't know if you all are like this, but Bob Moses, when he was talking about Freedom Summer, he said, "This is how I was raised. If you told me not to do something, it must be because I need to do it." If society brainwashes you to believe that it does not matter to participate in the one thing that people have fought and died for, and you agree with them, you're a fool.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Because people tell you things, in that case, to ensure your ignorance and your compliance with the status quo. I do want to add one thing, because I know I've gone kind of around the world on this answer. Keep in mind that the Freedom Summer was the beginning of this move, this very strong march to the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And one of the things that the Voting Rights Act did in Section 5 that was different than most other rulings that the Supreme Court had or most of the laws that were written is it had the burden of proof positioned on the other side. So you had to, if you wanted to change redistricting, you had to prove that it would not harm other people, that it would not harm the populations who were trying to vote. But when the Supreme Court struck that down and then moved in the direction of saying that you can't even talk about race, that's not a factor. And that was the whole point of the Voting Rights Act. That was the whole point of this long arc to reinstituting the rights that were given by the 15th and 19th Amendments. When you eliminate that, you're lying about what's happening. Ruth Ginsburg said in her dissent of the 2013 decision that the court was essentially saying in a rainstorm with an umbrella that since nobody is getting wet, we need to throw the umbrella out. Well, you're not getting wet because you have an umbrella. Now we have everyone getting wet. And unfortunately, when you start seeing this, you're seeing a retraction. I say that makes you want to vote even more. And that's what the Freedom Summer was all about. It was to reignite this desire, this intentionality around the country, to get every black person to get up and vote, every white person who had a conscience to get up and vote for people who were for the humanity of every citizen in this country.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, so now, y'all done got all your history. There will be an exam before you could leave. So I hope you took it all in. All right.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Davidson, so as a faith leader, how can religious communities help that fight against voting rights? For voting rights. I'm so sorry.
Thank you. So I think that our faith institutions are foundational to our fight for whatever rights that we have to fight for and continue to fight for. I think one of the ways that we can do that primarily is through education. And when I say education, I mean helping to develop and nurture young lives in a way that promotes advocacy, social justice. So post-civil rights, post-voting rights, most of us, if you went to church black church between 1970 and 2010, it is highly likely that you attended outside of potentially the AME church. It's highly likely that you attended a black, white evangelical church that was engaging in the same misogyny, the same restrictions and limitations on women, the same, because some of those institutions were fueled by this era of what was perceived to be peace, and so we started utilizing Southern white evangelical materials in our buildings. We are reading books that we're doing Bible study lessons in our churches on that, and all of that desensitized us to the struggle for liberation. And so what you see today in a number of churches is a lack of attention that's given to liberation and social justice. We don't hear those messages from a number of our pulpits. The most popular pulpits never mention anything that's going on in the world. Folks we watch on TV, the people who we hold in high regard, they're not talking about voting rights. Have you heard T.D. Jakes mention anything about voting rights? How many seminars have you attended? How many of his books do you have? But he was honed, his theology was honed at white evangelical institutions. And so until we restore the importance of liberation, of black liberation theology, in the idea that Jesus is on the side of the oppressed, and that the word gives tools to the oppressed to ensure that systems, that we're fighting against systems, not against each other, but that we're fighting against systems. And so one of the ways that we do that in particular is through our Freedom School. And so we've operated at First Baptist Church a freedom school that is born out of Freedom Summer. It's in partnership with the Children's Defense Fund, and we have elementary age students who are kindergarten through 4th grade, and every summer there is an advocacy project that they engage in. There's a National Day of Social Action, and so these 6, 7, 8, and 9-year-olds take personal responsibility for engaging in social action. Last summer's social action was public education is a public good. And one of the things that the Freedom School does is it teaches them how to advocate for issues that are of importance to all people, not just your individual self, that you are not in the world with your gifts and your talents only for yourself, but you are here for greater good. The year before, the social action was book banning, and we did a march against book banning, and they are responsible. These 6, 7, 8, and 9-year-olds, they build banners, they do all of those things because they can. And so we have to stop treating young people like they are incapable of doing those things. One of the other things is, we talk about young people, we've said we want young people. How many 18-year-old deacons do you have at your church? How many 22-year-old deacons do you have at your church? How many, we say we want young people, but what we have really wanted is young people that act like old people. That's really what we want. We want young, because we critique everything that they do, how they say it, how they dress, how they look, what they come with, their articulation of an issue, the way that they want to do it. We're there to say we don't do it like that. How about we let them do it like that? Because that's how we got the rights in the first place. They weren't old people doing out in the streets and marching in the 60s. These were young people, school-age, college-age students. They were leading the way, setting the pace, and then a number of them got elected to office, and then they stayed till they were old. Did the same. They did the same thing. I looked at the original Congressional Black Caucus the other day. John Conyers stayed until he I think he died in office. Walter Fauntleroy stayed until he died in office. I think he stayed until he died in office. So we have to allow young people the space to breathe, to function in the ways that they can. They have the energy, they have the intellect, they have the technological savvy and skill to be able to lead movements. We just got to get out of their way and provide mentorship, provide opportunities. And as we do that, because this fight is a multi-generational fight. It took them 60 years to overturn. Now, they started the day we got those rights in 1965. They've been fighting to overturn them since then. So if you think that they're not already looking to see how it is they're going to stop whatever it is that we're doing now, they are. And we have to rely on young people, young minds, creative minds to be able to help us to engage going forward.
Thank you so much.
And I'm going to tell you, the Freedom School at First Baptist is awesome. And just to go there and listen to the affirmation that they have to do every morning is phenomenal, just to go see that. I really appreciate you having that at the church there. It's great. We're going to go to the next question. And you want to go to, here you go, right here. There you go. That's for Jeremiah.
So, Mr. Woods, how can college students effectively mobilize their peers to engage in voting and advocacy for voting rights?
Thank you. Appreciate y'all for having me today. Reverend, that was really great. I'm gonna start calling you Bishop, actually. That was great. So one thing that I want to talk about is the misconception that young people do not care. And that is, we're in church. That's a lie from the pits of hell. We do care. It's all about, even from the introduction, my partner in crime, Ms. Gayleen, she introduced me as her partner on the youth side. That's what it is. It's a partnership. It's a multi-generational fight. And if you are, expecting, young people to fight the way that you fought, whenever you were young, we're not going to be able to do what we need to do. something else that you said I really appreciate is how many churches do you see nowadays? Because even, I mean, let's just be honest, y'all. Many churches, especially black churches, do not have many young people sitting in the pews. And the reason that is because you look at the leadership of the church, and you have deacons who are 65 years old, and if I'm 20-year-old or 20-year-old sitting in the pews, you know, I understand, you know, we might be right. I'm sorry, should I go up? 85 years old. you know, you have an 85-year-old deacon, you know, we might both be men. You might be able to help me out with whatever, you know, issue I may have. But there are some things nowadays, like we have this now. You didn't have this when you were young. This thing right here creates so many more problems than you even think. And so one of the things that I've been blessed to be is I was ordained as a minister at 16 years old. And so a lot of the things that was already instilled in me, even in the church, I believe the church is the foundation of a lot of things that was instilled in me in the church helps me out when it comes to civic engagement. And that's all about removing that misconception that young people do not care. Which brings me to my next issue, which is the challenge. And sometimes the challenge is trying to get young people to understand that civic engagement is important, that voting is a way for you to take action. Because while we may care, some young people don't know how to take action. And then that's where that intergenerational partnership comes in, because older saints have the wisdom to help the younger folks know that voting is a way to take action. And so, sorry, y'all I wanted to say one more thing before I give it up.
You ain't gonna give it up because I got another question for you.
All right. And so the most effective way that you do that is the way that me and Ms. Gayleen have, I believe, perfected. I mean, you know, so if any of you know how the state conference of the NAACP works, you have every adult committee there is on the adult committee, as in 25 years and older, we say, is we have that same committee on the youth and college side. So you have a religious affairs committee, you have a religious affairs committee for the youth and college as well. You have a education committee, you have an education committee for the youth and college as well. You have a political action committee. Myself, political action chair, you have a youth and college political action chair and an adult youth and college chair. It's all about that partnership and understanding that nothing can get done if you are not giving the wisdom to the younger people to do what they have to do. And so if you take anything from saying out today, it's going to take, for one, you bring in the youth to places like this, to conversations like this, and rooms like this, to teach them the fight, but also understanding that once you teach them what they have to fight for, allow them to fight the way that they need to fight. Because while I do understand, I appreciate the fight that many of you guys have paved the way for people like me, younger people, it's going to take, I'm going to say this in a respectful way. The fight is no longer yours. Some of you guys are rich. I mean, rich as in you guys are your retirement age, you've worked, you're blessed to have grandkids and, children. You are rich. And I'm not talking about just money, but just family in general. You're rich. I don't have kids. I pray I don't have kids until a few more years, but I don't have children. I don't have a job that can pay me, until I don't have that luxury. And so right now, the fight, what happened with the Supreme Court, that fight is no longer yours. You're set. The fight is now mine and my children's fight and my grandchildren's fight, because now I'm going to have to live in that decision for the next couple decades. And so, yes, that's all I have to say.
Ooh, that's deep. That's right. That's what we've been trying to say. I do want, go ahead. No.
I wanted to add, let me add that in the Freedom School model, it is not elders there are elders who are part of the space, but the SLIs, the student leader interns, who are essentially the teachers for the students, are college students. And the college students, as a matter of fact, our group is going tomorrow to Haley Farm I think they leave at 3:15 in the morning to go to Haley Farm to get training. We've got one of our reps is an Ella Baker trainer in honor of Ella Baker. And so the model is young people engaging with other young people to encourage them to think strategically and long-term about their place in society and what that means. One of the other things I was privileged to do is I was a part of a social justice fellowship for the National Association for the Education of Young Children, and our on-site activity was at Tougaloo College in Jackson, Mississippi. It was at Tougaloo. And one of the things that I had to do, and I had never thought about doing this, was my culminating project was to embed social justice advocacy into my course syllabi at the university. And so I have taken it upon myself to embed some social action opportunities for my students at Norfolk State that they can engage in through the course material that they're teaching, where they're advocating for issues that are public good issues. So they're not specific to a particular thing or group, but it may be voting rights that you want to be able to vote. How do we advocate for those kinds of things? So those are just ways that the Freedom School can be employed. I encourage you, if you want to start one, you can call us. We can help serve as a hub charter. You can do them in your own space. You don't have to get your own, but you can do it kind of under the license at first. You don't have to pay for the license. You do got to pay the student lead interns, and you got to pay because they get paid to do that. But there are a number of ways that we can creatively confront this as a part in light of what our ancestors and our elders have done to ensure that we can make that progress.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much for that. So, Ms. Attorney Nguyen, what legal challenges are currently facing Virginia's electoral system, particularly concerning redistricting and voter access?
Hi there, everybody. Thank you all for making it out this evening. My name is Attorney Rebecca Nguyen. The question was, what are the current legal challenges? I heard our Senator Mamie Locke kind of go over certain issues at the state level right now. Let me remind you all of something. Your vote does matter. Right now, we are fortunate in that voters have voted in a way that has made it such that the current makeup of our General Assembly is such that largely those elected officials align with the mission of the NAACP. It is important that we continue to keep these people in office and that we expand that leadership and add more people. With that, history does repeat itself. I've heard a lot since I came in about generational project making. Democracy is a group project. We can learn a lot from history, and as the white person on the panel, I want to remind everybody that this is not the first time we are facing this. It's my theory of the case as an attorney here that this has happened before. We can look at the civil rights era, and I consider what we've been going through the last couple of decades as we are orphans. What do I mean by that? One strategy to attack the civil rights movement was attacking our leadership. They murdered those that we looked to. They murdered Martin Luther King Jr. They murdered Fred Hampton. They murdered the great leadership before us. So do not be blind today when you see people being investigated, when you see people being targeted in any way. Stay awake and alert to those things. Martin Luther King Jr. also warned, and take this to the ballot box, he warned about the white moderate. I do not talk about that using a political sense. We at the NAACP are nonpartisan. So when I say moderate, I do not mean that with a political label per se, but look for your allies. The things that seem common sense are being reframed as radical. Do not be afraid to stand up and take radical measures peacefully and to take radical steps at the ballot box. and always be cognizant of the white moderate that Martin Luther King Jr. warned us about, because today, our leadership right here in Virginia is under attack. And we can look at history and see the same thing. So if you want to know what's on the radar going forward, pay attention to how our leaders are being treated. And show up for each other. And when I say show up, I don't mean, well, we're going to see how things play out. I mean, we are from the 757, so that means metaphorically we are taking off our earrings and we're showing up for each other. Okay?
And your shoes.
Yep. That's right.
So let me just say this. So Attorney Rebecca Wynn is the Hampton Electoral Board Chair. She's also a member of she's our voting rights chair for our branch, NAACP branch too, but she knows everything about election law, and she fights for us across the Commonwealth. So.
So thank you so much for that. Senator Locke, since you're actually from Jackson, Mississippi, could you give some of your experiences and tell us in what ways can the lessons learned from the Freedom Summer inform our current efforts to mobilize voters and ensure equitable access to the polls?
I wanted to make sure that it was clearly stated I am from Jackson, Mississippi. I was born in Brandon. I went to Tougaloo College. And what he was talking about, Tougaloo College had a model of how they educated us. And that model was one of active engagement and being an activist from the moment we stepped foot on that campus until we graduated. I remember protesting Richard Nixon when he came to Jackson, alongside my professors. And I want to add some additional things, and I'll get to that question. One had to do with Bob Moses and how Bob Moses and Jim Foreman, who was the head of SNCC at the time, actually engaged in the training process for those young people that they recruited to go into Mississippi. And they started with 1,000 students. They ended up with about 700 because several people backed out. And the reason they backed out is because they heard about those 3 murders into that second week of training. And part of the training was to let them know 3 things. You will be arrested. You will be beaten. And by arrested means you will be arrested more than once and for long periods of time. You will be beaten and you could possibly be killed. And there was a young man who survived the process by the name of David Kendall who said, "You mean they kill white people?" And Jim Foreman, who had no filter, said, "You damn straight they kill white people." And that's why you're participating in this training, so that we can give you the tools for how to behave once you get off that bus in whatever station where you're going to be. Because you're not going to be staying with white families. You're going to be staying with black families. And that in and of itself is problematic. And David Kendall's roommate was Andrew Schwerner. And Andrew Schwerner left after that first week. And we know what happened to Andy Goodman. Andy Goodman was one of the 3 that was killed. So, and after that happened, Moses and Foreman lost 300 of their volunteers, but 700 remained. and went into Mississippi. So having grown up in Jackson and understanding that Mississippi is one of those states that is not likely to ever change, and the behavior of individuals in Mississippi is probably the same as it was in 1964, where the mentality of those in charge, like Tate Reeves is the governor, and he immediately after the Calais decision decided that they were going to have a special session. I doubt very seriously if Benny Thompson will lose his seat. And the black population in Mississippi is 40%. Why would you only have one seat to begin with? And the fear is palatable because in last November, Mississippi even mobilized to the point where they made changes in their state senate, and in their house, so the fear is getting to be palatable, that folks are actually mobilizing and voting and turning out and making changes, And so I think that what we do from this point on is continue to mobilize, continue to register people to vote, continue to get people engaged, and say to folks who voted, that 1.6 million that voted for the referendum, I want your 1.6 votes in November. We didn't guess, we voted yes, but we will remember in November. And so let's continue to vote like our lives depend on it, because our lives do depend on it. Because we have a do-nothing Congress who seems to have forgotten that their job is to make laws, not to punt to a president, who's hell-bent on destroying this democracy. That's what we need to get, that's the message. That's the message. And to piggyback on something that Reverend Todd said, what was happening in beginning around 1970 was Nixon's Southern strategy, which was the forerunner to Project 2025. And ensuring, that there would not be any liberation theology. But we got to get back to some basics and understanding the role of the church and understanding that that's where we used to have our meetings. The mass meetings of the 1950s and 60s were where? Church. Where did our HBCUs start? Yeah. So we have to get back to the basics. Understanding that if we are going to continue to move forward and make progress in this third Reconstruction, we're in the third, then we're going to have to get busy and help people understand that we can't, rest on our laurels because we don't have any laurels to rest on. We got to get busy. Oh, and by the way, I don't know if you know Joyce Jarrett. She was an English professor at Hampton University. Dr. Jarrett retired several years ago, but she's from Meridian, Mississippi. She was in a freedom school in 1964. And she said that's the first time she ever owned a book that was new. It's because she attended a freedom school. But she's around in Williamsburg. So I think it would be wonderful for her to talk to those
that would
people.
be great for her to come. Senator Locke, can you talk about your amendments, the constitutional amendment that's going to be on the ballot? It's 3 amendments going to be on the ballot.
That's why it's important for us to remember in November. There will be 3 constitutional amendments on the ballot in November. And it's taken us forever to get us to this point of those amendments being on the ballot. And so one is one that I've been carrying for the last 10 years. And it has to do with the automatic restoration of rights. And it essentially says that voting, you know that voting is not a right in the Virginia Constitution. Pass this amendment, it will be. It will basically say that voting is a right that cannot be abridged by law. As long as you're 18 years of age or older, you will have a constitutional right to vote. And if an individual has been incarcerated for a felony offense, as soon as that person steps out of prison, they will have an automatic right to vote. And they will no longer require a governor to do anything for them, that as soon as they are done out of prison, they will have a constitutional right to vote. And that amendment is on the ballot come November. This other amendment is a women's reproductive right freedom, reproductive freedom, and the third is the marriage amendment. And what that amendment does is back in 2006, there was an amendment put into the Constitution that said marriage is between a man and a woman. The Supreme Court actually said in 2015 that that was unconstitutional. So what this amendment does is simply to say that we are voiding that 2006 law, which is unconstitutional.
Great.
So those are the three amendments
Thank you.
on the ballot in November.
Great, thank you. Okay, we're gonna do a rapid fire real quick, and on quick questions, and then we're gonna take a couple questions from the audience as well. So I'm gonna go to, why don't you ask Dr. Newby that? Dr. Alexander that.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Alexander, how do you view?
It's Newby Alexander. Newby
Got you.
Alexander.
So, Dr. Newby Alexander, how do you view the parallels between the voter suppression faced during the 1960s and what we are currently witnessing today?
Not a bit of difference. And we need to understand where we are. You know, our society has been brainwashed for the past 40 years. I remember 20 years ago, black people telling me we didn't need HBCUs anymore. And black administrators at HBCUs telling me we don't need HBCUs anymore. And I asked them, why do you think HBCUs exist? And they gave me some nonsensical answer that they were fed by some white conservative. The HBCUs were there because black people couldn't go to school with white people at the white institutions. And I said, absolutely not. HBCUs were created so that black people had a space that they defined. And so what we have forgotten is how we defined our own spaces, our own institutions. When I walk over to, and I'm not going to mention the name of the university, I don't see one black image at all. It's a majority institution, and yet so many black people go to that majority institution, but they don't see themselves. That institution was not designed for them, but they're using black people to make money for that institution. Institutions that are designed for African Americans have an African American culture associated with it. And most importantly, it is about empowerment. Making people believe that you deserve to be in the room and at the table. And not just in a side seat at the table, but at the head of the table. And that is why even today, the majority of professionals, black professionals, still graduate from HBCUs. And it may be a little easier, though that is also can be a lie, because a lot of white universities, majority white universities, they have a legacy program where if your parents went to that school. You can be dumb as a bag of rocks, but you're going to be admitted to that school. So a lot of universities don't tell you that they have open admissions for some students, but make sure that you understand that these institutions are there to help support you and that they're not an option, they're a necessity. So when I look at the civil rights movement of the past and the challenges that we face today, the one thing that we're missing today is an understanding that your institutions, your churches, your organizations, your schools are critical to your success because they give you not only that unity and that collectivity, but they give that support and that sense of belonging, which can never be underestimated.
Great, thank you. We're going to take a couple questions. So anyone have any questions? Raise your hand. Okay.
I'm a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner, and we have been told now that we are non-professionals. And I think some of this is correlated to all of the things that are going on, because there are many black women like myself who have gotten their graduate degrees and are practicing.
All right, thank you. You have a question back there? Oh, anyone else have a question? Okay, right here, Carmen. Carmen Taylor is our national board member for the NAACP. Well, you got a microphone behind you.
Thank you, Gayleen. My question is directed towards Senator Locke. Question: your First Amendment that you spoke about, will that amendment impact those individuals who are already left the prison system?
I can't hear her.
She said, put it in, because
She said,
will
the first constitutional amendment that you described on the ballot for the fall, for November, will it apply to people who have already been released from prison prior to the passage?
Thank you, sir.
Once the amendment passes in November, it applies to everybody.
Thank you.
That's good. That's good. That's really good. Anyone else have a question?
Right here.
Okay.
I'm Robert Myrick. I'm a member of this church, and to the young man sitting right there, when you said that this fight's no longer ours, it's the young people. Why do so many young people feel that it's not important to them? They're tired of hearing about it. From middle school, elementary school, college, whatever, they've been hearing this story over and over again. Are they getting burnt out of hearing the story, and that's why they don't want to participate?
Thank you for that question. So I'm going to say I respectfully disagree that we don't care, because we do care. Like I believe that it's all about the circles that you are in, right? A lot of younger people, and that's like one of the answers to one of the questions that I was going to have is it's about peer-to-peer conversations. And you ever heard of the thing like code switching? So I would never speak to a friend like I speak to my mom, right? Like even at 20 years old, I'll probably get popped in the mouth, But it's all about who's in your circle and who you are associating with. And so I know a lot of times, even for me, I'm very civically engaged, I believe. When my grandfather speaks to me about, all the things that, he's going through and stuff like that, I'm like, okay, thank you for that. But at the end of the day, I take that, I download that, and I spread it to my peers. So I wouldn't say that we don't care, because we do care. It's just all about where are we going to put that energy into. And it's all about you continuing to think that you're aggravating or irritating younger folks, but at the end of the day, they're going to remember the things that were taught by the older saints in these next coming years. And they're going to see and say, okay, yes, I was irritated, however, now it's time for me to put that into action.
All right, this is questions for Senator Locke and whoever else. I know during the past special election that we were outside. We had a lot of first-time voters that came out to vote. How will we engage them in the next two elections that we have in August and November? And a lot of them, I think they have gotten over the disappointment of what we went through the last time, but it has been some recent disappointments that a lot of our first-time voters and voters that vote for when we go out into the community, because I think the NAACP goes out, how can we engage them again? Because a lot of them are now saying we have some past things that happened that they're saying they're done. So how can we keep them going?
I think what we say is every election matters and elections have consequences. You know, that if we don't turn out, then we have to live with the consequences of whoever we get. You know, so we have to make sure that we keep people engaged, we keep people involved, and we tell them the reasons for why they should be out there and involved and engaged, and why the election itself matters. Those 3 constitutional amendments are very important. You know, we've been working on those amendments for 10 years or more. And so it's important that we get them past the finish line, because the process of changing the Constitution of Virginia is a 2-year process. And if we don't get them this time around, we have to start all over again, another 2-year process. Oh, by the way, we made Sunday voting a law. 2 Sundays. So now it's mandatory. So we have done, and we made the ease of voting in Virginia, where we moved Virginia from the bottom to near the top in terms of ease of voting. So we've made it easier for people to vote in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So we want people to participate in this democracy. We want people to be engaged. We want people to be involved. You know, unlike these other places, you know, where they simply go into a closet, into a closed room, you know, and say, this is what it's going to be. We want people to be involved. We want people to be engaged. We want people to have a voice. You know, that's why we want you to stay engaged. We want you to stay a part of this process.
I want to say the 3rd and 4th weekends is going to be called Freedom Weekends, because the 3rd and 4th Saturday and Sunday before the election across the Commonwealth, we'll be voting on those days too. So we'll be voting 14 days in a row straight. Early vote. I mean, going on to the end of early vote on that end of it. So I just wanted to say that, and we're going to be doing a big thing around it. Rebecca, you want to go real quick because I want to wrap up.
So as the chair of the election board, I have insight into voting patterns, and to answer Lance's question, what we can do to really get young people involved is to give them, bring them in to fight for something that is theirs, and that is a legacy builder. I want to commend the Hampton NAACP for working with the youth and fighting for a voting poll location to be established on the Hampton University campus. HU is now the only HBCU in the Commonwealth of Virginia with a polling location on campus. And let me tell y'all something, that did not stop with Hampton University, because other people elsewhere are looking at what we here in Hampton are doing. Norfolk State is up next. They are in line to hopefully have their polling location open on campus of Norfolk State, hopefully by November. And let me tell you something, I can see who is voting. The students are motivated by being involved in a fight to bring something where they are that is their own, that they can then leave for other young people coming in behind them. Let me tell you something else. Again, the NAACP is nonpartisan, but the vote we just took at the special election was a nonpartisan vote. It didn't have a D or an R behind it, but the NAACP was able to be involved and take a position to vote for yes. You want to know what the highest percentage vote in the entire Commonwealth came from? We have thousands of precincts across the Commonwealth. It came from Hampton University. The highest yes margin. So if you want to know what can get youth involved and turn people out, it's giving them something and bringing them into the fight. I've seen it myself.
That's right. There you go. I just want to give.
Could I just say one thing?
Real quick.
And that is that for those of you who have been in this fight a long time, please start sharing your trauma. Please start sharing what you went through. We protect our children and the people around us by not sharing our pain, and that is our mistake. Share your pain. Let your children know what you went through. When they understand what you went through, then it begins to matter. Then they know why you're passionate about it. Then they know what you sacrificed to make sure that they had the privilege to vote. Not telling them that information makes them think everything was fine.
Great, thank you. We're going to have, well, see, everybody spoke. Well, I will tell you this, Jeremiah, I know the youth in college, they want legislation to make sure that all colleges have a polling place. So you want to work with Senator Locke and then on this piece. They're trying to write it themselves. I'm like, no, work with a legislator on that particular piece. I'm going to give Dr. Davidson and Jeremiah the last words, and then Josiah, we want to hear from you real quick, too.
Thank you. I would just share with those of you who are a part of a faith community, please make certain that you utilize the capacity that we have to be able to speak in other tongues. You have to be able to speak in a language that is discernible for those with whom you are speaking. So you got to be able to speak the language of poverty. You have to be able to speak the language of public education. You have to be able to speak the language of voting rights. Depending on our audience, depending on the group that you're speaking with, you have to be able to speak in a language that is available and accessible in ways that can help motivate people to understand what's at stake for them as they go forward. And I will close with this story. My father, when I was young, my dad used to like old Western movies and television shows. I hated them with a passion. I despised them with a passion. But I remember there was a plot to one where this guy was chasing this other guy, and I'm all in knots and just terrified about what's getting ready to happen. You know, I'm 6 or 7 years old, and my dad is just chilling. He's not bothered by it at all. And I'm like, Dad, why are you so calm? It looks like this guy is getting ready to get attacked. And he says, son, I've seen this before. And so those of you who are in the room who've seen this before, you have to make certain that you provide a level of wisdom and calm and discernment around the fact that we've seen this before. Find the place where you can be of most use. Find the place. Maybe that place is resource and referral. Maybe that place is, you know what, I've got the capacity, I've got contacts and connections. I'm going to share with some young folk so they can have access to these spaces. But you've seen this before. And since we've seen this before, we can publicly declare, be not dismayed, whatever betide. Because through it all, God has always taken care of us. All right?
Thank you all so much for listening to me. I just want to say, I think one of the most misconceptions, or not the misconception, I think one of the problems with the black community is that we look at a young man or a young woman and we say, oh, you look like a basketball player. You look like a football player. Oh, you tall. You're going to be basketball. You're going to be NBA one day, you know. We got to start saying you're going to be a lawyer. You're going to be a doctor. You're going to be a nurse, whatever. Because at the end of the day, education is the foundation of success. Do you realize, I wrote his name down, I think his name is Kevin Roberts. Kevin Roberts is the president and the founder of the Heritage Foundation, which authored the Project 2025. Kevin Roberts has a PhD in African American history, in African American studies. The person that dismantled black rights in this country has a PhD, the highest level. I'm very honored. I'm lawyers, doctors. I mean, the highest level you can get in this country is a doctoral degree in any field. He has a PhD in African American studies, the same group of people who he just helped dismantle their voting rights for.
Great. Thank you. I just want to say, I know you want to make one wrap up. I just want to say this. If you see the Washington Post, Jeremiah was on the first page. I'm on the front page. He was at VMI, and he was the one that was discriminated against. And we got him out of there, and we got him to Hampton this year. But he fought. He challenged him. He challenged him at VMI. He's a fighter. Y'all got to keep your eye on him. Keep your eye on both of these guys, young men. He's a fighter because he stood up to them. You know, we helped him along the way. Some legislation was in place. We scared him a little bit too. But we got him out of there and got him to Hampton so he can get out of school in time. So we appreciate everything that he does. You want to say? Okay. We're gonna give it up to my co-moderator here, Josiah. Josiah, you want to give some last remarks?
Absolutely. So as I've been listening, I've been really taking everything in because I can speak to the fact that I am a young person. I'm 17 years old here. So saying that, I'm listening to all you guys speaking. I'm listening to the points of how do we get young people engaged? How do young people become educated? I think the main point is education, not lecture. That's it. Education, not lecture. What that means is taking the time to explain these different things, explain what these amendments mean, explain what these bills are, explain why it's important to come out and vote, because then maybe you might pick up a couple students, maybe you might pick up a couple people interested, instead of beating them over the head saying, yo, you need to go vote because I said so. It's a little bit different here. Hey, this is why. This is what this is going to do. This is why they're oppressing you. This is what is happening behind your back that would affect you that you don't even know about. So thank you very much.
All right. So let me just say this, the homework part. Just the homework part. We're kicking off Freedom Summer Virginia. And we're going to go into these low propensity areas and do voter registration. We're particularly going to be going to those 4 congressional districts that we were supposed to have in the referendum, which was the 1st, the 2nd, the 5th, and the 6th. We're going to be barnstorming those districts, and we'll be having bus trips and all of this stuff, but we'll be going into there. But we need to register people everywhere we go. And so when you leave out of here, we'll be having training. First of all, we want you to be a member of the NAACP, so we have membership forms outside as well, along with our upcoming event that we'll have Bishop, we have Leah Daughtry. She's going to be our speaker, and she's awesome with that. But let me just say this. When we talk about talking points, I think everyone said you got to talk to everyone wherever you are. And I say this everywhere I go now. I was at a gas station, and a young man was complaining on how high the gas is. You know, well, let me just say this. It's real high now. Look, and he was complaining, and he was using some expletives and everything. And I said, did you vote in 2024? He said, no. I said, oh, you voted for President Trump. He said, no, I didn't. I didn't vote. I said, yes, you did, because you stayed at home and you voted against your interests. And I said, and let me tell you why. I said, because when you vote for someone that's going to stand up and have policy, will circle back to you, to your pockets, it also goes to that gas level right there too. And it snapped just like that. You have to be able to say that their vote goes to policy. That's what we need to say. Not talk at them, talk with them. Find out what they're concerned about. But we got to galvanize we got to galvanize everyone together. And we always say this is the most important election. Well, you know what? Everything we see every day is something new. You know, I mean, what took me over the top was he's trying to give, he already got immune from being audited, but now he's trying to pay the criminals who was beating up police officers. I know the court stopped that, but you know, they ain't nothing but recreating the Ku Klux, well, they ain't recreating the Ku Klux Klan because they still around. You know, so that's how dangerous everything is right now. You know, it's just dangerous, you know, so that's why it's so important. So our homework is, galvanize people. We're going to have to go back to remember during Obama years, the election, we had Obama parties? We're going to have to come back and bring people in our homes and start talking to them in our homes and making sure that they register to vote. I do want to recognize we have Delegate Virgil Thornton here. We have Councilman Randy Bowman. We have our Vice Mayor Steve Brown is here as well, too. And we have our Chair of the Hampton City School Board, Dr. Richard Mason, is here, too. And we have Diane Kaufman. She is representing Senator Tim Kaine's office. And we have Maritza Alger, who's on school board in Newport News. Thank you so much. Did I miss anybody? All right, thank you so much for being here today. Please, if you're not registered, sign up. If you want to volunteer, sign up. Tell them out there that you want to volunteer, because we're going to need a whole lot of soldiers. And I want to thank Reverend Jefferson, I think he's gone already, for always opening up, and Yolanda and her team too. Yeah, Yolanda back there, for always, opening up the doors for us. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have something to take back, and let's go win and fight. Thank you. Thank you. Let's take a picture, y'all. Let's take a group shot. Come on, y'all. Let's take a group shot. Come on. Let's take a group shot. Let's come over here. How you doing?